Now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Joseph, but said to his people, "Look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous and powerful for us. Come, let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they'll continue to multiply. In the event of war, they might ally themselves with our enemies, fight against us, and leave the land altogether." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built for Pharaoh the storage cities of Pithom and Ramses. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, until the Egyptians came to dread the people of Israel and worked them relentlessly, making their lives bitter with hard labor, digging clay, making bricks, all kinds of field work. And in all this toil they were shown no mercy. Hello, my name is Christian Boothman. My colleague and I, Zach Webb, shall be historical educators for the rest of this documentary. Our topic, the Exodus of Egypt. We will be talking about the leadership and legacy of the Semitic biblical prophet by the name of Moses.
3, 2, 1.
Action. Before the Exodus was ever even a widely known phenomenon, the Hebrews were enslaved to the Egyptian civilization because Jacob, also known as Yaakov, migrated to Egypt, and he was the father of the 12 Semitic tribes of Israel.
When Jacob and his 12 sons died, the new Pharaoh feared the great multitude of people. In order to keep himself protected, he enslaved them so they could never join with an opposing civilization and siege Egypt.
The Hebrews continued to multiply, and Pharaoh continued to fear them. In order to try and halt any further growth, Pharaoh ordered that all male Hebrew babies be executed by being cast into the Nile River.
One baby born during this time was Moses, but his mother, Jochebed, would not stand for her son to be executed. She fastened a papyrus basket to carry him through the river and sealed it with pitch. Moses was placed inside the basket and was safely carried through the river and to a daughter of Pharaoh. She required a Hebrew mother to nurse and raise him, and that mother ended up being his real mother, Jochebed, while being the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter. Later, Moses had aged and went to visit his Hebrew kinsmen and observed their strenuous and formidable labor, but then he noticed an Egyptian slave master assaulted one of the Hebrews and glanced around to make sure no one would catch him for the illegal act he was destined to commit. He then slaughtered the Egyptian and secreted him within the vast sands of Egypt. After this event, Moses was found out as a manslaughterer and fled to Midian, where he worked and labored as a shepherd for Jethro, a priest of the Midianites. Here he met his wife, Zipporah, and had 2 sons with her. Moses then used his instruction from the powerful and very enigmatic burning bush. He started for Egypt to fulfill his divine intervening endeavor with instruction from the burning bush, as a leader with a bright new legacy and illustrious future awaiting him, in the land which God promised to Abraham many years ago. Using the signs that God gave him, Moses set out toward Egypt. Upon his arrival, Moses went to Pharaoh, showed him the signs, and asked him to let the Hebrews go. Pharaoh refused and made the Hebrew slaves work even more arduous labor. When Pharaoh did not release the Hebrews, Moses then conversed with God about the issue, and he replied that plagues and trials would transpire upon Egypt, but the Hebrews would be protected from them. The initial plague was the account of water transforming into blood. All water sources in Egypt, from the Nile to mere clay pots. Moses went to Pharaoh, but just like before, Pharaoh refused again. The succeeding plague was frogs. They were everywhere: pots, beds, cupboards, closets, pyramids. It was noisy and uncomfortable. The following plague was lice. All the dust in Egypt transformed into lice, which wasn't a very pleasant experience. The next plague was flies. They bit everything and droned throughout all of Egypt. The next plague was death of Egyptian livestock. The livestock were Egyptians' source of income and food, but now they were all dead. The sixth plague was boils, a terrible, painful experience for all of Egypt. The next plague was hail mingled with fire. The hail was so enormous and scorching, it killed Egyptians and destroyed almost all of their vegetation. The eighth plague was locusts. The locusts ate all vegetation not destroyed by fiery hail.
The 9th plague was a thick pitch darkness that lasted 3 days. Fortunately, the Hebrews had sources of light in their homes.
Even after 9 horrible plagues, Pharaoh still refused to grant the Hebrews freedom from Egypt.
The final and most grievous plague upon the Egyptians was the death of the firstborn son. If you did not sacrifice and prepare a lamb in a specific way and then spread its blood on your doorpost, your firstborn son would be killed by the angel of death. The instructions were given to the Hebrews. The next morning, a cry of suffering like never heard in all of Egypt before or again was heard that morning.
Pharaoh then allowed the freedom of the Hebrews after 210 excruciating years of slavery. They wandered in the wilderness, led by Moses, searching for the land promised to them.
Then Pharaoh changed his mind. He and his militia pursued after the Hebrews and caught up to them at the Red Sea. In order to protect the Hebrews, God did this. As soon as all the Hebrews traversed the Red Sea on dry ground, God enclosed the Red Sea in on Pharaoh and his militia.
After the Hebrews traversed over the sea, they complained everywhere they went. This made it clear that they needed laws and statutes to keep them on the righteous path and not constantly griping. God summoned Moses to climb Mount Sinai and receive the laws written by God's own hand. This is a pure act of leadership by Moses because he wills for his people to be set on the path of righteousness.
These statutes were known as the 10 Commandments, not to be confused with the latter established and developed 613 laws, which includes the 10 Commandments within its structure. The 10 Commandments are known as the following. Number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Number 2, you shall not make for yourself any idol, nor bow down to it, or worship it. Number 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Number 4, you shall remember and keep the Sabbath day holy. Number 5, respect your father and mother. Number 6, you must not commit murder. Number 7, you must not commit adultery. Number 8, you must not steal. Number 9, you must not give false evidence against your neighbor. And lastly, number 10, you must not be envious of your neighbor's goods. You shall not be envious of his house, nor his wife, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor.
When Moses returned from his journey up Mount Sinai, he discovered that the Hebrews had made themselves a golden idol in the form of a calf and broke the tablets that had the 10 Commandments upon them in his fury. Moses melted down the gold that made the idol and made the Hebrews consume water polluted by the gold of the calf. This shows that Moses wants to lead his people according to the will of God, but he is not a perfect human being.
Moses then climbed the mountain again and received another set of tablets engraved with the 10 Commandments on them.
The Hebrews continued to sin and complain, and were condemned to continuously wander the wilderness for 40 years.
Through a cycle of trial and error, the Hebrews eventually made it to the Promised Land. But unfortunately, Moses did not make it to the Promised Land due to his disobedience to God.
He was a great leader of the Hebrews. He wrote the Pentateuch, also known as the Torah. It includes the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These books are a cornerstone of faith to many people.
Not only did he write the Pentateuch, he liberated the Hebrews from the captivity of the ruthless Egyptian Pharaoh.